Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report News Hour. 16th year of Changi, the leap 6th month and the 11th day in the month. Tim Ho was sitting in for the second king, Chenagu Byung-Jae-woon. Let's take our usual tour around the kingdom and see what's going on right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee. We have 64 degrees, partly cloudy, times of clouds and sun today, a thunderstorm in spots this morning, followed by a couple of heavy thunderstorms in the afternoon, and 78 for a high, not so bad, right? And it's 64 for a low tonight, increasing clouds with a couple of showers and heavy thunderstorm tonight. Father's hometown, Cheongju, North Pyongan Province in Korea. Currently 88 degrees and mostly sunny, low of 70 tonight, increasing cloudiness. And tomorrow, a high of 82, a couple of morning showers, otherwise cloudy and humid. At the Cheonggyeong Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, we have 54 degrees this morning and sunny skies. High of 87 today. Hazy sun smoke from wildfires in Canada can create reduced air quality. 87, and then tonight 59 degrees. I guess it's interesting. I guess that smoke, is it blocking the sun? Is that why? But the nighttime temperatures are fall temperatures, aren't they? Autumn temperatures. And down in Limestone County, Texas, no problem with Canadian wildfires there. Currently 72 and mostly clear. And today a high of 91, some sun then turning cloudy with a thunderstorm and humid. Tonight 74 for a low, mainly clear and humid. And this weekend we're going to have some triple digits. It looks like on August 9th, the Saturday will be 100 degrees, and August 10th, the Sunday, will be 99 degrees. That's the forecast. I'm sure that will change through the week. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, heat advisory going on, currently 84 degrees and clear, low of 77 tonight, turning cloudy and uncomfortably humid. Thunderstorm in spots late. Tomorrow, a high of 92, times of clouds and sun, hot and very humid, a couple of showers. And then in Gunma Prefecture, at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, right now it is 94 and partly cloudy and warm, and humid tonight, low of 77. Tomorrow, high of 101. Very hot with intervals of clouds and sun. Heat will be dangerous. Minimize outdoor activity, it says. Then in Ilan, Taiwan, it is currently 81 degrees. And overcast, low of 79 tonight, brief evening shower or two. And then tomorrow, a high of 89, mostly cloudy with a little rain in the afternoon. All right. Okay. All right, so let's go to Father's Word. And here we are in the book on blessed families. Here in chapter 1 of the book on blessed families, 1 point, what section we are in here? 3, section 3 and 3.4. 3.4. God is the original body, or, Punche. We've struggled for many years now on how to translate Punche, haven't we? And original substance is the one that is used by OSDP. Literally, it's original body or main body, right? Main body. As I've explained before, you have a computer, all right? You have a computer, and then you have a bunch of accessories, right? You got yourself an external camera. You got yourself maybe a like microphone, a mouse and stuff like that. Okay, so the computer itself, that's in Korean, that's the Punche. It's the main body. And then all the other extras are sort of all your little ports are filled with the other extras. So, and I've also explained that in the 19th century, when China, Japan, Korea were all importing Western ideas and culture, things like that. They came up with a lot of words. They created a lot of words to express Western ideas. And one of the ideas that they were trying to express was the word ontology, ontology. And it turns out that they actually came up with two ways in which to express ontology in their language. And one of those two is 본체론, the theory or the discussion of 본체. So in a sense, okay, that's ontology is if you equate 본체 with God as OSTP does, as Father does, then 본체론 would be then basically the study of God, the study of God's existence, this kind of thing. So here we have that God is the 본체 of true love. He's the main body, the original substance, 본체 of true love. This is why we need to learn Korean, because translations are never perfect, and sometimes they are far from perfect. Okay. I won't say we're far from perfect here, but we're not very near either. Okay. But I think you get the idea. You get the idea. Okay. So God is the 본체 of true love. So everything that is connected with true love will become one body. So God is the 본체, with the original body, original substance of true love. And so everything that is connected to true love will become one body, because everything is connected to God. Parents are living gods who represent God. The husband and wife are each one side of God, and sons and daughters are small gods. In this way, when three generations, check that. The family organization that is created in this way, centering on three generations, created with three generations centering on true love, is the foundation for the kingdom of heaven. And without such a foundation, the kingdom of heaven cannot be accomplished. Praise God. Praise God. So gets down to family, doesn't it? Family, 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 family. I didn't, of course I knew, and yet I didn't know. I knew, but for some reason I didn't really focus that much on how much, until recently, on how much Father's teaching really does hone in on the idea of family, right? And especially these days when a lot of people more and more people are refusing or choosing not to get married, and also choosing not to have children, even if they are married, or choosing to have children outside of marriage. I mean, choosing, not, trying a marriage and having one child and then, oh, well, this is not going to work out, let's get divorced. But actually, not that, but actually choosing from the beginning. I don't want the marriage thing, but I just want to procreate my seed. I think this is Elon Musk's, seems to be Elon Musk's thinking. So the family has been in crisis for a long time. I remember taking a sociology class in college back in the early 1970s, where professor was talking to us about the new sort of forms of the family would take. And well, yeah, we've got it in space. Certainly that prediction certainly did come true. But I grew up in a very traditional family where the father and the mother, and I never had a stepfather or stepmother or anything like that. And it's interesting that I think most of my siblings, one exception, but most of my siblings have basically, well, even the ones that are not, they've taken a little bit of a detour, but have finally now wound up in sort of the traditional family structure of heterosexual parents and then children. So praise God, praise God. We need more families like that. Heterosexual parents with children. Those are the families that we need right now. I say heterosexual because, aside from what we may think of homosexuality theologically, it's the heterosexual families that are actually producing and raising, Elon Musk, I'm talking to you, raising children. You can't just have babies by multiple women and then just throw money at them. I'm sure the women that you've had babies with, Elon, are not at all lacking in financial support, but that doesn't work. You got to raise the kids. You got to raise the kids. Elon Musk was talking about how he was fooled, he was deceived by his one of his children's school, and anyway, he was deceived into signing a statement, I guess, saying that which was interpreted or allowed the child to get a new gender, I guess, become a boy or a woman or whichever it was. And he was criticizing that school district very much, and he was really regretting the fact that he allowed himself to be deceived in that way. He said he did it, he signed it without knowing what the implications were anyway. But yeah, so Elon Musk, as smart as he may be, is lacking in this area, of family. So is Elon Musk successful? He's the richest man in the world. He's got more monetary units than anybody else, okay? But is he a successful husband? Is he a successful father? And that is the first mission of every man. And of course, for every woman, the first mission is to be a successful wife and a successful mother. And many people who society tells us are successful are actually very lacking on that point. So anyway, well, thank you, Father, for the lesson that you've given us, and to remind us again that we need to focus on the family. All right, so let's go and see then what is going on today. And let's see here. This week is kind of an important week. U.S. is going to have some important talks with Russia, specifically with Putin. Telegraph in the UK, I think Telegraph passes for a conservative paper there, is saying that U.S. prepares for showdown talks with Putin this week. Now, last week we had the former Russian president and former, also current joint deputy secretary, I think it is, of the National Security Council of Russia, sort of hinting at the possibility of a nuclear strike, use of nuclear weapons in connection with the Ukraine war. And then we had President Trump responding by telling reporters, or a reporter, in an interview that he had ordered 2 U.S. Submarines carrying nuclear weapons to move closer to Russia. And so we closed out the week last week with that sort of a nuclear threat hanging over the world. And this week, of course, is when, I think it was on Friday, that President Trump's most recent deadline for Putin expires. And Putin has not given any sign that he is going to retreat in response to that deadline. And so then President Trump has said that he's going to put some more tariffs on Russia and also on China and India, which he says are helping to fund Russia's war in Ukraine. And that's when the former Russian President Medvedev came out with that implication for sort of hinting at the possible use of nuclear weapons. Anyway, so let's see what the Telegraph is saying. Donald Trump's envoy to Russia will hold showdown talks with Vladimir Putin this week as the Friday deadline to make a deal or see further sanctions approaches. Steve Witkoff will visit Moscow on Wednesday or Thursday to meet the Russian president, Mr. Trump said. His task is to get a deal where people stop getting killed, according to the U.S. president. And this has always been President Trump's focus. You know, he's not Henry Kissinger. He's not a sort of a power politics guy. He's not interested in moving pieces around like that. He wants to stop people getting killed. And this has consistently been his position for a very long time. His task is to get a deal where people stop getting killed, according to the U.S. president. Putin has already met Mr. Witkoff 4 times in Moscow in an attempt to broker a peace deal. But this trip to the Russian capital comes ahead of the shortened deadline set by Mr. Trump for Putin to reach a ceasefire or face crippling new sanctions. The U.S. president has said the new measures could mean secondary tariffs targeting Russia's remaining trade partners, such as China and India. This would further stifle Russia, but would risk significant international disruption. So China, yes, but remember, President Trump's one mission, he has one job. He has one job, okay, one job, and that is to bring down the Chinese Communist Party. All right. Immigration, Father's not all that excited about immigration. That doesn't really get him excited, quite frankly. Father may say that, hey, you guys got lots of space, right? But, yeah, but Father, what about the murderers and the rapists and the child traffickers? Okay, I understand. But he's not really excited about immigration. Okay. And, he's not excited about trade deficits or anything like that. But Father is focused on bringing down the Chinese Communist Party. And this is President Trump's mission right now. This is why God saved him in Butler. I don't know if President Trump realizes this. I don't think he does, actually. Okay, there will be sanctions, but they seem to be pretty good at avoiding sanctions, Mr. Trump told reporters on Sunday. Mr. Trump also confirmed that U.S. nuclear submarines are now in the region where they have to be, after he announced on Friday that 2 underwater vessels would be moved towards Russian waters. The answer is they are in the region, where they have to be, he added on Sunday. The decision to move U.S. nuclear submarines came in response to an escalating war of words online between Mr. Trump and Russia's former president. Dmitry Medvedev, a key Putin ally now on Russia's Security Council, had aggressively criticized Mr. Trump's sanctions ultimatum and reminded him of the strength of Russia's nuclear arsenal. Mr. Trump said on social media that Medvedev's highly provocative statements led him to dispatch the submarines just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that. It is not clear which nuclear submarines have been moved, but experts said it was likely to be nuclear-armed vessels. It is extremely rare for a U.S. president to signal their movements, which are usually shrouded in secrecy. But he is advertising this on purpose, hoping that this will deter Putin and encourage Putin to take President Trump's ultimatum more seriously. We'll see what happens. Or, the people around him, or Xi Jinping, I think all it will take is one phone call from Xi Jinping. Hey, Vladimir, come on. I think the guy's serious. All right. I think, that Trump guy, I think he's serious. And we're kind of teetering here. I'm kind of teetering here. All right. So please, no, let's go ahead and humor Donald Trump. Just stop for a while. I mean, come on. You can start up again as soon as the next president comes in. America, they change presidents every few years. Why does it have to be now? Just stop for now and wait. It's only about less than 4 years that there will be a new president. And then you can start up again. Maybe that's the phone call that Xi Jinping is, I hope, making to to Russia. We'll have to see. But on the other hand, we do want to see Russia and China becoming less friendly. Right now, there are 4 countries on Satan's side: Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And these 4 countries right now are closely united with each other. And we need to break up that unity. And perhaps this will be it. Perhaps if Putin ignores President Trump's ultimatum, maybe then China will come out and say, "Hey, Donald, listen, we're cutting them off. Don't sanction us. We're cutting them off." All right. So don't do anything. That may be the situation, but that would be okay too. That might be actually even better. In response, Medvedev, one of Russia's most outspoken anti-Western hawks, who has long been at odds with Mr. Trump, has stayed unusually quiet. Apparently, somebody called him. Noting his silence, Andriy Yermak, Vladimir Zelensky's chief of staff, said the reaction of the Russian drunk who had been threatening nuclear war made it clear that Russia only understands one thing: strength. The shift in Washington's nuclear posture towards Russia reflects its growing frustration with Moscow over its intensifying bombardment of Ukraine. And Mr. Trump, for his part, by the way, has mentioned the possibility of bombing Moscow and Beijing. And I don't think he was drunk at the time. No, in fact, I know he was not drunk at the time because he does not drink. Medvedev may have been drunk, as this Zelensky guy says. Medvedev may have been drunk, but we know that Trump was not drunk. He doesn't take alcohol. So that may be something that is in the minds of Xi Jinping and perhaps Putin as well. The submarines coming closer to Russia, presumably within range. Although I think they can pretty much strike anywhere in the world, but anyway, within range. Mr. Trump and by the way, Russian submarines are also close to America, right? Don't think that the Russian submarines are just playing around and doing nothing. They're also very close to American shores. Mr. Trump, whose patience with Putin has worn thin, said he was disgusted on Thursday by Russia's deadly drone and missile attacks on Ukrainian cities. Russia fired a record number of drones in July, killing hundreds of civilians, while its forces grind forward in the country's east and have accelerated their gains for the 4th consecutive month, according to analysis. Putin, who has consistently rejected calls for a ceasefire, said on Friday that he wants peace, but that his demands for ending his nearly 3.5-year invasion were unchanged. He has demanded that Ukraine cede complete control of 4 regions that Moscow has invaded and claimed to have annexed, a demand that Kyiv says is tantamount to surrender. It comes as Ukrainian drone attacks on Sunday sparked a massive fire at an oil depot in the Russian Black Sea port of Sochi. It marked a rare strike on the city, which is some 400 miles from the front line in Ukraine, and was part of a series of wider weekend attacks on oil refineries across Russia. Kyiv said it will intensify its air attacks against Russia in response to an increase in Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians in recent weeks. In an indication that Mr. Trump called Russia's bluff, the Kremlin on Monday called for caution. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, said Russia is very attentive to the topic of nuclear non-proliferation. And we believe that everyone should be very, very cautious with nuclear rhetoric. Yeah. All right, Peskov, why don't you talk to this guy Medvedev, right? Okay. The Kremlin also welcomed the announcement of Mr. Witkoff's probable meeting with Putin this week, calling it an important and helpful step. Well, maybe there'll be good news then, because that looks like that's the end of that, right? So we'll see. So he's going to Russia on Wednesday or Thursday, and the deadline is Friday. So let's watch this closely and pray that God's will can be done. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. God, I'm sure, has a strategy in mind, and we'll see. We'll see. It may be that Putin will go ahead and try to call Trump's bluff, and then China will get panicked, or Xi Jinping will get panicked, or China as a whole will get panicked and call up President Trump and say, "Hey, don't kill us. We're gonna stop trading with them." That's possible. That's possible. China does not want to have its banks sanctioned by the U.S. and cut off from the dollar trade, regardless of all the rhetoric about dumping U.S. treasuries and the BRICS and the whole thing. China really survives on the fact that it is a part of the dollar system. And if they get cut out of that, that would be a death sentence for the current Chinese regime, for the Chinese economy for sure, and probably for the Chinese regime as well. Okay? So China will avoid this at all costs. India, I don't know. I mean, India. India, I don't know. I don't know what India's up to, quite frankly. Yeah. India is an interesting country. You have a lot of people, a lot of extremely smart people in India, and I know a lot of things were invented in India, and Indian people are obviously extremely intelligent, but individually that's true. Taken as a whole, I'm not so sure. Not so sure. But India has always, even during the 60s, 70s, 80s, India always kind of prided itself, I would say, on being what they called non-aligned during the Cold War. Non-aligned. So we are not partners with. We don't want to align ourselves with the Soviet Union. We don't want to align ourselves with NATO or the West or the United States. We're just non-aligned. And actually, they helped to start something called the non-aligned movement. And Indonesia was part of that as well, and some other countries were part of that. And for a while, that was a pretty big block. So India, I don't know, but China definitely will do what it needs to do to survive within the dollar system. All right, let's see here. Let's see here. I wonder if I can get a story on that quickly. Let's see here. I see a lot of headlines here about how China is promoting the yuan and how the reliance on the dollar is decreasing and stuff like that. But a lot of this is political rhetoric really. And Chinese economy right now cannot exist outside of the dollar system. And so I think they will be they'll make sure that they remain in that system. All right, let's see here. Oklahoma, I think we had a story before about Oklahoma, didn't we? Did we? I'm not sure. Anyway, here's another one, and this we can cover this again if we did it before. Oklahoma governor details steps to secure state against CCP influence. China is literally coming directly to the states, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt said. Oh, yeah, good man. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt said China has been trying to exert influence at the state level across the United States, which he has rejected, while also creating his own international strategy to avoid reliance on China-made imports. They're going to the states now because Congress is so dysfunctional. It's so political. It's so partisan that they're literally coming directly to the states, Stitt said in an interview with American Thought Leaders that aired on August 1. Regarding Beijing's attempts to influence him, Stitt said he has effectively blocked them. They don't reach out to me, he said. I've shut them down. Stitt, now serving his second term as governor after winning re-election in 2022, recalled the supply chain disruptions that occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. In response, he said he had his advisors look into the issue and that those disruptions would be 20 times worse in the event of a conflict between China and Taiwan. In June last year, Stitt issued an executive order to secure Oklahoma against the threats posed by foreign adversaries, particularly the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. And the order mandates the Office of Management and Enterprise Services to conduct a wide range of tasks, including conducting an annual statewide risk assessment to identify vulnerabilities such as cybersecurity threats and risks to the electric grid, water infrastructure, and supply chains. The order also instructs OMES to audit critical state procurements and directs state agencies to reduce reliance on single source procurement. It's a national interest for us to bring the supply chain closer to home. It also helps us target certain things and promote economic development in our state, Stitt said. While securing his state from the CCP aggression, Stitt said he has implemented an international strategy, having met with 80 different ambassadors to put his state on their radar and signed memoranda of understanding with multiple countries, including the UK and Denmark. Last December, Stitt, accompanied by officials from the state's Department of Commerce, traveled to Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan for a trade mission. In Taiwan, he met with Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te, and the two sides signed an MOU to strengthen collaboration on the energy and aerospace sectors. Stitt explained that his Asian trip was about helping U.S. allies unplug from their reliance on China, such as oil, gas, or agricultural products, given that Oklahoma is one of the top natural gas and crude oil producing states. Yes, they need to know that they've got an ally that they can support, Stitt explained. That's part of the reason we make those trips, to see how we can help, what their needs are. Earlier this year, Oklahoma legislature passed a resolution expressing support for the state's continued partnership with Taiwan and celebrating the 46th anniversary of the Taiwan Relations Act. Taiwan and the United States are currently not diplomatic allies since Washington switched its diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China in 1979. Yes, who was that? That was Jimmy Carter, wasn't it? Jimmy Carter. Nonetheless, under the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979, the United States remains Taiwan's most important ally and main arms supporter. In Oklahoma, Stitt said he has been working to position the state as the critical mineral capital of the United States. In May, Emirates Global Aluminum, which is based in the UAE, agreed to invest $4 billion in the construction of an aluminum smelting facility in Oklahoma, the first of its kind in the United States in 45 years. It is to be built at the port of Enola, which is located east of Tulsa. Tulsa, of course, is the capital of Oklahoma. Oh, I'm sorry, Oklahoma City is the capital of Oklahoma, but Tulsa is another big city. I think, right? Am I right? I think so. My parents made me memorize all this stuff when I was growing up in Japan, and all the state capitals and all. But Oklahoma is not one that we look at very often. So let me just, I don't want to give out wrong information. Oklahoma capital city. Yeah. Okay. Oklahoma City is okay. Oklahoma City is the capital. Thank you. Tulsa, though, is another big city. As you know, for Oklahoma, a big city. According to an MOU signed by Stitt and the company's CEO, the smelter's annual capacity would be about 544,000. I think we can skip that. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, yes, okay. So the Oklahoma governor is doing a good job. That's great. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we can look at on the Epoch Times. Let's go up to the front here. Trump says Americans could get dividends from tariff revenues. Well, I've seen a lot of stories on this, and are you holding your breath? I'm not. But I will say though that this is different from the COVID-19 era money that we were getting. That was, pure money created out of thin air. But this is money that it's actually revenue that the government receives from whoever it is that's paying it, whether it's the consumers, the exporters, the importers, or whoever it is that's paying it. Somebody's paying it, and the U.S. government is receiving it, and then they're going to put it into the pockets of the American citizens. So it's not an inflation trigger, in my opinion, although I'm not an economist. But as I understand, it's not an inflation trigger because from a macroeconomic standpoint, you're simply moving the money from one pocket to another. And it may offset some of the sort of rise in prices, sort of the inflation that is going to happen as a result of these tariffs. And I think inflation is coming, certainly. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see how that will work. And here, what to know about the Senate failing to reach a deal on Trump nominees? So the Senate went ahead and went into its August recess without confirming all of President Trump's nominees. And we'll see what happens as a result of this. But this is part of the Washington politics that, the back and forth that I really try not to get too involved in. And Texas Democrats leave the state to prevent redistricting vote. This is another one. Okay. It's quite entertaining, actually. If you're looking for something to be entertained by, I suggest you read that story. And it looks like they caught some Chinese guy in Australia for foreign interference, interfering in what? Anyway, they caught some guy in Australia. Secret payments that keep global ransomware attacks going. Okay. Ransoms are being paid left, right, and center, one tech expert said. I'm sure you know what ransomware is. If not, I invite you to look it up. It's not a good thing. And Beijing pays influencers in Africa to spread anti-U.S. messaging. They pay a lot of people. I saw one YouTube video by a guy who I guess is living in China, a Westerner living in China. I don't know which nationality he is, but he's white. And he was saying, all this thing about the social credit score in China, it's all a lie. And this was the point of his video. Obviously, he's lying, and he's obviously being paid by somebody in China, probably the Chinese Communist Party. Well, eventually it all goes back to the Chinese Communist Party. So yeah, they spend a lot of money on propaganda, and it's easy to get caught up in that. Okay, let's see here. Right, there's the Oklahoma governor. And Russia and China challenge the world over Antarctica. Antarctica, of course, being the South Pole. Russia and China are preparing for a major territorial grab in Antarctica, where the United States and its allies are totally unprepared for a confrontation. And it's about access to resources, oil and krill, for starters. The scramble for Antarctica reached a significant milestone in early 2025 as Russia announced that it had discovered a major oil field in the British Antarctic Territory, holding at least 511 billion barrels of oil, more than any other oil field in the world. The Russian oil search was illegal under the 1959 Antarctic Treaty. Still, the Russian Geological Survey ship, operated by the state-owned Rosgeo, conducted surveys in the Weddell Sea region, claiming the research to be purely scientific in nature. It clearly was not. But then Russia and the People's Republic of China have been dramatically expanding their attempts to claim rights in Antarctica in recent years, despite not being proximate to or facing states on the continent. The Antarctic Treaty stipulates that any claims to resource exploitation remain frozen, and Russia holds to its stance that it will abide by the treaty and is peacefully conducting research. But the implications and temptations are clear, and Chile and Argentina, which, like Russia, are among the 56 signatories to the Antarctic Treaty, have already begun to express interest in the oil find in an area where the two states have overlapping claims on the British Antarctic territory. Tobias Ellwood, a UK Conservative Member of Parliament and former chairman of the UK Parliamentary Defence Select Committee, noted that in May this year, Russia's blatant prospecting for oil in Antarctica in breach of the treaty reflects Russian President Putin's growing confidence to test international norms, with every expectation the West will be too risk-averse to stand in its way. He may be right. Neither the UK nor its ally Australia, which has the greatest territorial claims on the Antarctic continent, has committed major resources or political interest in the region for some time, while PRC and Russian projection there has increased substantially. The US-based trade publication, The Maritime Executive, on March 2, published a report indicating that China and Russia were cooperating at an increasing pace in Antarctica, despite their mutual tensions in other areas. This cooperation ostensibly was for the purpose of geophysical surveys to understand the Earth's climate system, but it clearly had broader implications and unstated objectives. In 2025, the publication noted, China and Russia have held talks over joint drilling in Antarctica. In September 2024, Beijing and Changchun City hosted international conferences on Antarctic exploration, which were attended by Russian specialists from the Federal Agency for Mineral Resources. With the successful geophysical survey this year, in 2025, the cooperation is likely to extend to other sites in East Antarctica, the report said. It also noted that China and Russia have consistently opposed plans to expand maritime protected areas in the Southern Ocean, which would mean reduced areas available for krill fishing. Significantly, the Russian and PRC moves are not just to test international norms, they are keeping with the widespread trend now championed by US President Donald Trump to move to a new era in which old and theoretically outmoded treaties and agreements are sidestepped or renegotiated. And Washington itself, although widely engaged in Antarctica and a driving force in establishing the 1959 Antarctic Treaty, is as anxious as Moscow and Beijing to retain its options in exploiting the continent's resources should the situation change. But what is significant is that South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia have not stepped up their strategic positioning with regard to Antarctica. Under the Antarctic Treaty, they have significant claims to territory there, especially Australia, given its broad southern exposure to the continent and the principal guardian of the northern limits of the Southern Ocean. The most recent Antarctic Treaty consultative meeting was held in Milan, Italy, from June 23rd to July 3, and was attended by representatives from all signatory states to the Antarctic Treaty. The meeting was hosted by the Italian foreign minister and attended by 450 delegates, but it focused mainly on environmental issues, developing a framework for Antarctic tourism, and so on. It failed to address the imminent change in the strategic nature of the Antarctic continent and the probable negation of the treaty. Indeed, it was almost as though the ATCM was totally divorced from the reality of Antarctic historical engagement or the involvement of the earlier regional powers, or even the United States, Russia, China, or India, four of the main strategic out-of-region powers determined to dominate the continent. The ATCM Secretariat, in fact, has only been operating since 2004 and has its permanent base in Buenos Aires, Argentina, but most critical strategic actions regarding Antarctica by powers with bases on the continent are taken without reference to the largely academic engagement of the Secretariat. Indeed, the most significant activities regarding the region are conducted in a climate of deep secrecy. But not just Antarctica, but also the moon, the moon, I think, which is probably an even more serious situation. China is staking out territory, or they want to establish bases there on the moon and want to somehow exploit the minerals on the moon. I don't know how they plan to get those minerals back to the Earth in a cost-effective way. But or if maybe they're going to use those minerals to build some spaceship that will take off from the moon, like in, what was it, 2001 Space Odyssey? Isn't that what they did there? They built a spaceship on the moon and it took off into deep space from there. That was a movie for you young kids. The title was 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it was a movie that came out long before 2001. None of its predictions came true, at least not in 2001. Some of them are coming true today, especially with AI. Anyway, so the moon, yes, and my feeling is that when human beings finally do start to go out into the universe, not just to the moon, but beyond, that we will not be colonizing different planets or whatever, but instead we'll be using the minerals that we find on planets and asteroids or whatever to build spaceships, and that within those spaceships we'll have Earth-like atmospheres. So kind of like the Star Trek model, I think. Star Trek model, right? Where you can have normal gravity and people walking around without spacesuits and stuff like that. And I know Elon Musk wants to somehow, what was he going to do? He was going to explode some nuclear weapons on Mars in order to make it habitable or something like that. Some crazy stuff he was talking about. But well, anyway, but as I've always said, now is not the time for us to do that, because we don't want to be spreading fallen nature. We don't want to be spreading original sin throughout the universe. So let's take care of that first. So we're still a long ways from being qualified, in my opinion, to be colonizing the universe. But if the fall had not occurred, somehow I've gotten away from Antarctica. I'm much more interested in the universe. If the fall had not occurred, I think that by this time, whatever, how many hundreds of thousands of years it's been, by this time, we would be occupying a significant portion of the universe, in my opinion. By this time, we would have Starship Enterprises going all around the world and all around the universe, and going at warp speed and stuff like that. Anyway, that's here nor there. But Antarctica, yes, 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 China, Russia want to exploit that. Well, I can understand China. They are always hungry for new resources, and they certainly need those resources, and we will see what they're going to be there. Oh my, am I going to have to do this one? I don't give financial advice, all right? So what you're about to hear is not financial advice. But this one does need to be. This is not financial advice. Maybe I should skip it. Okay, I'll skip it. Yes. It's going to be, I don't know how to deal with it without it turning into financial advice, so I'm going to skip it. All right. Maybe someday I'll tell you what it was. Okay. Okay, I was about to react to something there. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Newsmax. We haven't been to Newsmax yet, have we? Okay, and Newsmax also is saying that tariffs could fund money to Americans. I guess this is the kind of story that people like to read, but please let's not hold our breath. All right, we'll see what happens. Yeah. And if the money does show up in your account, then at that point you can decide what to do with it. With the COVID-19 money, the virus money, I sent that immediately to the church because I didn't want to have anything to do with it. With this money, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. At least a 10% I would donate to the church, that's for sure. I always donate 10% of whatever income that I have to the church. But we'll have to see what happens here. All right. Some Americans, he says. All right. Let's see here. What else is going on there? Countries learn Trump means business. And Trump's tariff revenue is addictive. Could be. Yes. This could be one of those things that is supposed to be temporary and it becomes permanent. That is possible. Long term. With President Donald Trump's tariffs generating significant revenue, in July, apparently they brought in $28 billion. The impact on federal coffers could make it hard for future administrations, including Democrats, to pull the plug on them, New York Times reported Sunday. That is very true, yeah. The economists call the new revenue stream addictive. Through July, the U.S. collected $152 billion in customs duties. Okay, that's through July. In July alone, it was 28, I think, nearly doubling the 78 billion collected through the same period in 2024. If left in place, tariff revenue could generate more than $2 trillion over the next decade, according to the report. Well, 2 trillion, okay, but we've got 37 trillion in debt. I think it's addictive, Gomez, an economist at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, told the Times. I think a source of revenue is very hard to turn away from when the debt and deficit are what they are. Even for a future Democrat administration, that's a hefty chunk of change, Tyson Brody, Democrat strategist, told the Times. The way that Democrats are starting to think about it is not that these will be impossible to withdraw. It's, oh, look, there's now going to be a large pot of money to use and reprogram. Yeah. Former President Biden, after slamming Trump for imposing tariffs on $300 billion of Chinese imports during his first administration and vowing to rescind them, kept them in place and hiked rates on China beginning last September. Biden jacked up tariff rates on electric vehicles from 27.5 to 100%, for example. All these experts said the world was coming to an end. They were all the Chicken Little, sky is falling, and not only did the sky not fall, the sky is full of $100 billion a year coming to the United States of America, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told Newsmax on Thursday. Yes, well, that is true. And so if it turns out that we're going to get some dividends out of this, or that we're going to get some money out of this, it's going to be kind of a, and it may be pitched as a refund of our taxes, perhaps. Except the problem there is that people who don't pay taxes are going to get it too. So I guess that's not what they'll say. All right. Anyway, we'll see how this develops. But yes, President Trump is collecting a lot of money from somebody, whoever it is. And, if it's the consumers, and if prices go up, then next year for the midterm elections, he said, yeah, okay, yes, but I'm giving you the money back. And I'm taking from the rich because they're also paying tariffs. I'm taking from the rich and giving to the middle class and the poor. So vote for me, or not vote for me, vote for Republican candidates. That's probably the strategy that the White House is planning to use right now. All right, let's see here. White House's Miller charge Hillary, others for Trump coup. Okay. And this may not actually be possible, but it sort of makes a good headline and a good slogan. And here, oh wait, what was I going to do? Oh yeah, there was a story on Mercury, wasn't there? Apparently, RFK Jr., the health secretary, is going to make it so that mercury cannot be used in vaccines. Okay. Here we go. RFK Jr. bans mercury in vaccines after 2-decade battle. No more poisoning pregnant women and children, he says. RFK Jr., who led the push for more than 20 years, confirmed the move on Saturday, blasting federal health agencies for allowing a known neurotoxin to be injected into pregnant women and children for decades. In a detailed video statement, RFK Jr. announced that a mercury-based preservative still found in flu shots given to children and pregnant women has now been fully banned in the United States. I'm proud to finally deliver on a long overdue promise, protecting our most vulnerable and from unnecessary mercury exposure, Kennedy posted on X. Thimeros, how do you pronounce that? Thimeros, anyway, a compound whose main ingredient is another big word, had been used for decades in a preservative in multi-dose vaccine vials. According to Kennedy, the CDC shockingly continued to permit its use in flu shots given to pregnant women and children, despite overwhelming evidence of its neurotoxicity. Kennedy cited peer-reviewed studies and official government documentation identifying this as a neurotoxin, carcinogen, mutagen, and reproductive toxicant. The amount of this stuff in the flu shot that CDC just banned under my order is 25,000 times the EPA's safety level for drinking water, he said. Kennedy also slammed federal agencies, accusing them of turning a blind eye to the science for decades. He pointed to a 2001 admission by FDA official William Egan, who testified under oath before Congress that this stuff's safety had never been studied in humans. A subsequent study found that this highly toxic mercury remains in the brain for over 27 years. Kennedy cited a CDC-funded 2017 study linking flu shots during pregnancy to miscarriage, which found the odds of miscarriage within 28 days were 7.7 times higher for women who received the vaccine. He also referenced a 2017 study published in the Journal of American Medicine Association that reported an elevated risk of autism spectrum disorders in children whose mothers received a flu shot during the first trimester. Wow. So hopefully this will reverse the trend of increased autism among American children. We'll see, yes. Has there been a connection? Let's do a very quick search here. I got less than 2 minutes, but let's try something here. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Here we go. U.S. bans mercury in vaccines linked to miscarriage, autism, and brain damage after decades of scientific warnings. Okay. So that's the same article. But what about previously? Thimerosal and vaccines may contribute to autism severity. That was what? July. Okay. But here, thimerosal and autism, is there a link? The answer is no, these guys say. Okay. So anyway, RFK Jr. has banned it, and we will see whether autism improves. In other words, the numbers go down. And if the numbers go down, that'll mean that the people who've been saying that there is a connection were probably right. At least it would appear that they were right. The rise in autism, also the rise in various forms of allergies is really quite something, isn't it? In America, and of course obesity, and I think there's a lot wrong with our pharmaceuticals, with our foods, and hopefully hopefully science can be depoliticized. And we have big pharma, but we also have big food, and they are also influencing a lot of these decisions by the government. And eventually the science does not try to get to the truth, they follow the money. We found that out during the whole COVID situation with Fauci. When is Fauci's Order of Medal of Freedom being taken away? That's what I want to know. Anyway, I guess not today. All right. God bless, Godspeed. May his kingdom come quickly. See you all tomorrow.